Good evening, everyone. We are here at the witching hour, at least on the East Coast. And tonight we have a special guest, Kat Rocha, uh, the editor for Zero One Publishing, editor of many horror, both collections, uh, a lot of comics, novels, and we will get into all that in just a second. Just a reminder to anyone Monday night, I have Von Klaus, author of Monster MD. He's going to come by and talk about his new book, Kitaru, and it's all about witches. So that'll be fun. And 2 Mondays from now, we will have John Hervey coming back, and he will talk about his new book, Black Tiger. I'm not sure the number. He's got a lot. But the lady of the hour, Kat Rocha,
Good
how are
evening,
you?
everyone. How are you this evening?
So, you are almost a human incarnation of Jack Skellington. Halloween is your Christmas. What is it about the holiday that you love so much?
I've just always loved Halloween, how spooky it was, how scary it was. I've always loved things that go bump in the night and jump up at you. As a kid, I was forbidden from reading things like Stephen King. So of course, I had to get into horror because I was forbidden from it. I would stay up until 1 a.m. on Saturdays to watch Tales from the Crypt. It was always a treat to be able to do things like watch Are You Afraid of the Dark, The Midnight Society, and when my mom found out that, hey, her little girl likes reading, she bought me every single Goosebumps as they came out. Same with Fear Street.
Nice.
So, in fact, I wrote to R.L. Stein and got a reply when I was a kid. So,
Oh yeah.
um, mhm.
How was his reply?
Standard.
Oh, okay. Thank you
You
for your
know,
interest. Here's a headshot type of.
I didn't get a headshot, but I would like to think that it was his hand that signed it and not some
Okay.
aide in at Scholastic. But still, it's the fact that as a kid, you don't know that it's a form letter. It's just,
Oh, for sure.
wow. My favorite author wrote back to me. Oh my God. And I wrote to him fully expecting not to hear anything back. Even as a kid, I was jaded. But so it was a real treat that or at least the people under him, uh, had that showmanship with their readers. But yeah, I've always just been really super in love with horror. It also probably doesn't help any that I grew up in a haunted house. So yeah, so that ghosts were definitely in my life, and my mom and her friends cultivated that. So, I've got
Ah.
spooky things in my past.
I haven't really heard your haunted house stories. Like, how haunted is it? Are we talking about full on poltergeist, portals to other dimensions, or like your TV always turns itself on?
My house growing up in Inglewood, California, was built in the 1920s. This house was so old. Oh, how old was it? This house was so old that it still had not only a built-in ice box, but a door to the outside so that the iceman could come and fill it up
Nice.
all the time. So, this is how old, my house was. Um, and it did have somewhat of a history. I don't know the history. I just know that it was not a happy one in at certain times. Um, but growing up, we were fine. But the older I got, the weirder things got.
Hmm.
The sound of pacing in the dining room because we had ripped up the awful avocado colored shag carpeting and
Ooh.
returned it to the hardwood floors that the house had been built with. And like nearly as soon as we did that, I would hear pacing in the dining room, back and forth, and it was very clearly footsteps. I did go in there a couple of times to see what was going on because this is Inglewood, California. We did have four break-ins, one of them while we were in the house. So, I wanted to make sure this wasn't somebody breaking into our house, but nope, there was nobody in there. And sure enough, when I turned the corner, the sound stopped. And that happened several times.
Hmm.
Um, but the f- the longer we stayed there, the weirder things got. Things would get moved and it was just my mom and I. It wasn't anybody else in the house. Yes, we did have cats, but cats can't like move. Silverware from the dining
Yeah.
room into the living room. They don't do that. Um, and when we wanted to move, uh, that's when things got really weird.
Hmm.
Starting a year or two before then, but definitely when we were trying to move, we'd have things like my room was always cold. And I don't mean, oh, it's a little chilly in here. No, I mean it is summer. Like full on August in Los Angeles, and you can see your breath in my bedroom at noon.
Wow. So you were getting free AC from the ghost. That he was doing you a
Exactly.
solid.
And I that would be cool, but I hated being in that room. As a kid, I was always scared to death of my closet. I would not go into that room if the lights were off and the closet door was open. I was
Hmm.
that deathly afraid of it. And it just increased the longer we were there. And finally, my mom had a friend of hers who is a psychic come to the house to smudge it. And she took one walk around and she goes, "This house doesn't want you to leave." And in fact, you mentioned poltergeist, the nexus point on where all this is emanating from is from, my bedroom closet.
Ooh. Why is it always a closet? You know what
I
I
don't
mean?
know.
Like it's never like the bathroom or something like that, but it's always the closet.
It's always the closet or it is the bedroom. It's like you said, it's rarely ever the bathroom or, or the kitchen or,
Hmm.
some easily traversed room. No, it's always something off. So when I was off at my dad's house, because my parents are divorced, while I was off with my dad, she and my mom like did this full cleansing ritual on the house, and within the month, the house sold.
Oh, well, that was good.
So now, whether it was appeasement or it was actually cleansing, I don't know. I didn't feel anything different, quite frankly, but we moved, so I was happy.
Huh. And like it never, whatever it was, never followed you. Like once you were out of that house, it
Mm-mm.
was gone, right?
Yep, it was gone. I've never had a problem with walking into rooms where the closet's open again. I've never had a problem since then. So,
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. The house I grew up in,
mhm,
which I live a couple streets down from now, um, I had some similar things. It's started like I remember it's a bi-level,
mhm.
and there's a family room on the first floor. And so I remember as a kid, they'd send me down there with my friends, so we didn't mess up the upstairs, and that was fine. But when I got a little older, probably like 8 to 10, like I really didn't like being down there, especially at night. If there were no lights or something, like I would sprint across the room and run upstairs as fast as I could. And then the room on the second floor that's directly above it was an extra bedroom that eventually we had a TV in. And my parents would yell at me for leaving the TV on, but it wasn't me. It would just turn on by itself, but it was like always when we would leave the house. So,
Oh,
and they thought it was me until one time, like I was at my grandma's for a couple weeks, and it did it to them. So that was weird. And then like weird stuff would happen. Things would go missing, which of course I got blamed for. But then many years later, I had some friends in town from college, and one friend went down there on that first floor to sleep on a pull out sofa, and he said, "Oh yeah, in the middle of the night, your cat jumped on the bed and walked all over me." And I said, "No, no, my cat died the year before. We didn't have any pets then." So
Oh, weird.
I don't know. There was one time I thought I was going nuts hearing voices too, but it turned
Hmm.
out we just had raccoons in the chimney, so
Oh, that's
that
scary
was okay.
enough.
Um, so uh, as an adult, like
Hmm.
you mentioned you like Halloween. Are you sort of more on the we'll use an Evil Dead scale with you. Are you more of an Evil Dead one where you like things like really horrible and scary and gory, or are you kind of like Army of Darkness where it's like more goofy with a horror veneer, or are you like right in the middle, an Evil Dead 2, threading that line?
Well, first, full disclosure, and you're gonna call me a heathen. I've never seen Evil Dead 1 or
What?
2. I have only seen Army of Darkness.
No,
So,
that's
but
just not
I
right.
I know the references, all that. Although I always bring this up because quite frankly, I'm proud of it. I was taught how to draw by the artist who did the poster for Army of Darkness.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Uh, yeah, his name's Jeff Watts, and he has a school in Encinitas, California, and he is amazing. So yeah, very cool guy. But anyway, but to answer your question, I'm not so much a horror gore person as
Mhm.
I am a horror mood person. Um,
Ah,
you know,
okay.
like some of my favorite both books and movies is uh, Hammer Horror's Hell House, which is based on the book by the same name by Richard Matheson. And again, ghosts again. I am all about hauntings. Um, but at the same time, and I hope I don't offend those who are watching right now. I thought Poltergeist was not Poltergeist, sorry. I thought that The Exorcist was hilarious. So I,
Really, that's interesting.
my scale is all over the place, but I go for more mood
Hmm.
and ambience than I do gore or jump scares or other things like that. In fact, uh, gooey gore. Um, actually geeks me out in not the I'm having fun way, and which is odd because my stepmother was a makeup artist for Hollywood.
Oh,
In fact, she worked primarily on Power Rangers, but I got to help her a lot with some small films that she did, like Things 3, Old Things. I was part of second unit for that,
oh,
where
very
we
cool.
ripped a werewolf's head off and I got to plunge the blood and I got to be a part of making that and doing all the effects. I was also taught makeup effects by one of the artists for Stan Winston. This is what happens when you live in Los Angeles. You wind up in Hollywood one way or another. So making those gooey effects, I had a ton of fun. Seeing them on the screen, I'm not too into it. So.
Okay, that makes sense. So mood is your main thing.
Mhm.
Um, so as both a publisher and an editor, is that the thing that you're looking for the most, or is it sort of all over the place depending on the author?
Depends on the author, depends on the story, depends on is is this a an anthology that I am editing for? And again, what are the parameters of the
Hmm.
anthology? Or is this, the writer, or in the case of graphic novels, the writer author's vision? And also just plain, is it a good story? I mean, if it's a good story, if it geeks me out, I don't care as long as it's a good story. That's the number one thing I look for when I'm editing. We have a book that we published, The Sadist Bible
Hmm.
by Nicole Cushing, and there are some rough areas to read in that book. I'm just gonna be honest here. It's basically, what if Clive Barker wrote Thelma and Louise? That's the
Yeah.
basic, the elevator pitch. There's some rough places involving a baby. Not gonna say anymore. Um, but even though I had to step away and it was a little stomach turning at times, it was important for the story that be there. The story would have lost something if it wasn't there. So, and it was a good story, otherwise I wouldn't have published it. So, yeah, when I'm editing, first and foremost comes story.
Okay. Yeah, I listened to the Audible version of
Mm.
Sadist Bible a couple of years ago.
Oh, very
Um,
cool.
so I recall exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So and I would agree, if you have a strong stomach, the Sadist Bible might be for you.
Hmm.
So everyone can check that out. So I'm kind of wondering, it seems like Hollywood, popular entertainment, everything is kind of up in the air these days.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of what's getting published doesn't make any sense
Putting it
from from
mildly.
from an author's point of view or from a reader's point of view.
Hmm.
Um, but like for example, in Hollywood, there was horror movies will always sell. You know, do you see this as something where like as opposed to maybe other genres, that horror in literature, be it straight novels or comics or whatever, is there always going to be like a consistent demand, a consistent audience for decently written works, or do you think it sort of like comes and goes like fashion?
I'm going to do a roundabout answer. And
Okay.
this I'm actually going to paraphrase some things that uh, Ishii has done. Jayashiro Finney being, not only my husband, but one of the authors that I publish. And he has said multiple times that horror is, because horror is safe, it's a safe way for you to
Hmm.
expose yourself or to experience things that are otherwise actually truly terrifying or dangerous, stuff like that. It's also a barometer for what is scaring people. And
Yes.
so it's more a case of, what are the trends that are in horror, and what are the things that get people nervous that they want to explore in these ways. Like, in the 70s, there were lots of, House on the Left,
Hmm.
I Spit on Your Grave, lots of incidences of good kids just wanting to have some fun, and they run across the wrong people, and maybe not even realizing that they're the wrong people, and having horrible things happen to them. uh, it's that terror. um, there's also the phenomenon of, the devil baby. uh, you know Rosemary's Baby, Children of the Corn, The Omen. You have, and it's the fear. The Exorcist being one of them, and it's that fear of children turning on you, these sweet and innocent kids turning on you and going against you and doing harm to you. And, and Satanism comes around. We're now entering into an age where Satanism is coming back. So it's a, and these things can symbolize different things, but it's basically you have these trends, you have these tropes, and the types of horror also tell you um, how people are experiencing that fear. For instance, in the 90s, it was all about government conspiracies, high
Hmm.
level horror of there's things happening that you, the average person, are not aware of. And, just like with the Matrix, once you get exposed to it, you are thrown down a rabbit hole. All of that went away pretty much after 9/11. And, now it's like, yes, we all know that there's conspiracies. It's not a fear anymore. It's, we all know that this is happening now. It's just a truth.
Hmm.
And what do you get? You get zombies.
That's true.
So, and it goes from high level intelligent horror to just mindless, just shoot them all. So,
Yeah, I almost think I view zombie stuff as freedom fantasies, because it, I would say like the same. It's actually the same way I view stuff like Conan the Barbarian.
mhm.
People think that it's a power fantasy with Conan. I don't agree. I think it's a freedom fantasy where people are very unhappy with their lives and they wish that, like, if you're a corporate drone, does it matter if you get that contract? No, no one's life's changed. Maybe your boss gets a bonus. That's about it. The only thing that really changes is eventually you'll get old and retire if you're lucky, or they might work you to death. But people wish that, like, in a zombie world, they wish they could start over and form their own community. And hey, my obscure knowledge of this thing is going to help us keep the zombies out. And you could, no one's telling you when to go to work and whatnot. Similar to like Conan, right? He's able to go to all these countries because of his skill in fighting. He's able to pick up women. He's able to get money, go drink, and do whatever he wants. Nobody tells him what to do. Um, and that's how I view zombie stuff. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a manga called Zom 100.
Mhm.
They just started having a TV show on Netflix, both live action and animated. And the whole premise of the story is there's this guy who's, I think he's like 23 or something. He's worked at a company for 3 years, and his life is hell. Every day is horrible. He almost wants to kill himself. And then a zombie apocalypse happens, and for him, it's the greatest thing ever because he doesn't have to go to work anymore. And he makes a list of 100 things he wants to do before he gets bitten. But, you know, it, I think what you said is exactly right. Like, there you can see Japanese angst about, work culture and whatnot expressed through silly zombies. But I do think so. Uh,
Well, the
that you're
other
right.
the other thing with zombies is that the second you're bit, you're no longer a person.
Hmm.
So that gives people license to be as violent as they want against what would otherwise be humans. They are no longer seen as human in the context of the narrative. So again, you can do whatever you want to them, including if it's children. It's perfectly
Hmm.
fine to, mow down children because they're no longer considered human. And if I can see how that's therapeutic for some people, where it gives them the license to have these power fantasies of, killing everybody that's ever done them wrong or that's ever gotten in their way. But at the same time, there's only there's a certain amount of that that's healthy and there's a certain amount of that that's not. And for the amount of zombie stories that are out there that is just I'm going to kill them all. It's
Hmm.
not. or they're a cozy apocalypse, not an actual, we got to make the tough decisions, we got to, really learn how to survive, or it's a cozy apocalypse where we have everything that we want in our neat little settlement, and the bad guys are out there and we can just pick them off whenever, and we're only in danger when we choose to go out there. um that's another barometer. It's what is it really that people are fiending for or looking for with these stories. Now, with that said, I find it interesting that The Walking Dead is hugely popular, but that's a cozy apocalypse.
Hmm.
Our friend Raltz Bloodthorn, who writes the Behold Humanity books, um, he will get on a tirade on The Walking Dead because of the amount of good quality resources they are constantly leaving behind, because nobody ever bothered to pick up a book on survival and on what it is you're going to need when you're going to be living in the middle of the apocalypse. With that said, it's usually a certain caliber of people who like 28 Days Later. And that's
Yeah.
because with 28 Days Later, yes, the zombies are scary. It's the people who are scarier.
Yeah, I agree. But in some ways, it seemed like, just from my non-scientific
Hmm.
analysis, it seems like zombie movies are getting more and more popular in East Asia. So you see a lot in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan.
Hmm.
I've seen some Thai ones too recently, but it almost seems like they're on the downslide here.
Hmm.
Do you have any sense of like, well, what's the next thing that's coming up? And I hope it's not sparkly vampires again.
No, no, no. I don't think it's sparkly vampires. I will be honest, with the way things are going right now, I'm seeing a return to stuff like, um, you know, uh, home invasion, the
Mm,
purge, because we're entering a political cycle and things are already getting ugly. And I've noticed that this current um, wave, we've already actually lived through a pandemic, so you can't have anybody get like a rage virus or something like that. It's now seems to be thought viruses, or the horror that is groupthink seems to be it. And and so I'm seeing a return to movies like The Purge. um Although Saw 10 came out, and franchise doesn't seem to be wanting to go anywhere anytime soon. And that's all about seeing the people that you hate get their comeuppance, and
hmm.
people love that. So
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, that never goes out of style. Um, I've never been a big fan of the Saw series myself, like that and Hostel. When it gets
mm,
into torture porn, it's a little too much for me. Like,
that's why I
I'm
love the
a
first one. The first Saw was the best, and
yeah,
it was not torture porn.
no, no, not at all. Um, yeah, I need a little plot with it. Like, I need the stuff to make sense somehow. But that's just me.
No, I
Um,
agree.
so through 01,
Hmm.
you've published a number of anthologies. You've got graphic novels.
Hmm.
Um, what are you guys working on these days?
Oh, currently, by the way, shameless plug. I should have brought books in here to flash in front of the camera, but I didn't. Yeah, as Yang so kindly put on his title card, you will find Case File Arkham. There's actually 2 volumes of that, and it's Lovecraftian horror set in Lovecraft's Arkham, Massachusetts. Sorry, I had to find my words there. So if you like, PI noir. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So yep, here's volume one.
So, that's not what I was
Yep,
looking for.
and here's volume two. 2 volumes.
Ah,
Both of them you can get from Amazon.com. Again, written by Jay Shiro Finney, although his pen name when he does graphic novels is Josh Finney, and art by Patrick McAvoy. And our anthology Whispers from the Abyss. This is volume one. We also have volume two. So get all your new horror today. It's awesome. As far as what we have coming in the future, we are currently working on a new series of anthologies. The first one in the horror, well, we already have one out already. In It's a sci-fi humor. It's called Ridiculum, and it's all pulp stories, including works by Philip K. Dick, C.L. Moore, all the classics. And that's the whole point of this new anthology is we heard Razor Fist's call to go out there and find pulps because they are there for the taking. These are good stories out there that are there for the taking, but we realize most people don't know where to find them. So we are
Yeah.
cultivating them, for people. Um, and have them out for extremely low price. The first one, Ridiculum, we're only charging 99 cents on Kindle because, again,
Oh,
this is all stuff that has been printed before in the 20s, 30s, 40s, even up to the 50s. But, so you can find these stories yourselves, but we are cultivating them for you. And yes, we'd like a little, shekel for our time for that. Um, and we are going to be doing the next Whispers from the Abyss anthology in that style as well. Lovecraft wrote in the 20s and 30s. As we all know, his books are public domain, but there are
mhm.
so many other writers out there that wrote in his sandbox, that contributed to his sandbox and contributed to the mythology. And a lot of those works are forgotten. So we are cultivating those for the next Whispers from the Abyss. We're also going to be doing another horror anthology that is all pulp vampire stories because I absolutely love vampires. Not sparkly ones. No, I do not believe in sparkly vampires. These have teeth, these have fangs. You know, they maybe turn into bats. They're just cool.
That's interesting that you guys are really picking up on the pulps. That's one of my predictions of what's coming next. Um, I to an extent for me, it's like music, where you have like overly produced bands, and they get real popular for a while, and
Mhm.
then it's like some bands dressed in flannel, practicing out of their garage. Then they'll get big because people don't want the overproduced, and then you
Mhm.
end up with Backstreet Boys after them. So it seems to an extent like it's cyclical, where um, I think a lot of the stuff that come from publishers, they're kind of based on who the people who pick the stories for publishers, for the large publishers, are. It's all sort of like homogeneous,
Mhm.
where there's not a lot of variety, and I think that there's a lot of people just banging out pulp style stuff in their garage, and of course you have the classic pulps.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my prediction of where one of my predictions of what's going to be a popular form of entertainment in the next, let's say, 20 years. But it's interesting with the vampires. So are you more the evil force of nature kind of vampire, or are you more like the sexual deviant kind of vampire? Or what is it about vampires that really tickles your fancy?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I do like the sexual tones that tend
Mm-hmm.
to go with vampirism, whether it's overt or whether it's subtle. It is something that has drawn me to the creatures. Um, do I prefer supernatural, biblical, or science vampires?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the story. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed the original Underworld. I liked
Oh,
the director's cut better than the theatrical cut, but those are sci-fi vampires. Uh, Same with Blade. I absolutely love Blade, and that's more in the realm of sci-fi vampires than
hmm.
biblical. On the other hand, one of my favorite genres of all time, which is Vampire Hunter D. In fact, I'm going to show something off here. I don't know if you can see it or if the light is blowing it out. That image up there, that's an
Uh-huh.
original Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust animation
Oh,
cell. And that
wow.
is D and Meyer Link fighting. And below it is my action figure of D that I made a stand for. But anyway,
Very cool.
um, but those are, especially if you've read the books, Vampire Hunter D is very much so, biblical vampires. Crucifixes, holy water, tropes of religious symbols, harm them. You know, I love it all. Now, am I more inclined towards the Western image of vampires than to Eastern? Yes, that's true because that's what I'm most familiar with. Although I do find Chinese vampires hysterical. So,
They're awesome.
but things like the Liak, is it the Liak? That thing is terrifying.
I'm not sure what's that.
That is an Indonesian vampire. It's also called a witch.
Oh,
The Liak will disengage its head. It's mainly female. Will disengage her
oh.
head and fly away, and
Hmm.
the entrails will come out with it, like all of her organs, and the body will just stand there. And she primarily will find pregnant women and cause them to have miscarriages and eat the fetus. I mean, that thing is creepy as hell. So
Definitely.
and
Um,
not in a sexual it's not a sexual vampire, so maybe that's why I
no,
don't care for it so much.
someone will rule 30 for that.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, they will.
oh, just forgot my question. Vampires, sugar. Well, I'm sure it'll come
Sorry,
back
didn't
to me
mean
at
to
some point.
derail it with the fetus eating vampire there.
Well, it's hard to go wrong with that. Oh, that's what I was going to ask for you. So you mentioned like vampires with religious overtones, crucifixes. The sun burns them because it's God's light, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Do you think it's becoming harder to tell those kind of stories as opposed to science kind of stories, just because the the lack of religion in most Western audiences, and especially the lack of religious education?
Actually, yes, I do. Let's look at the classic, the character upon which all vampires are based, pretty much. Bram Stoker's
Mm-hmm.
Dracula. That was written in a time period, the Victorian era, where the world, as we know it, aka the West, is entirely Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and so as a result, if it's amazing how many people they know of Dracula, but they've never actually read the book or they didn't actually pay attention to it when they read it. But it is made very clear in the book that he was a human who made a pact with a demon. So therefore, he has become demonic himself. It is stated very clearly this is a demon we're dealing with. His female thralls are just animated corpses with lesser demons in them. And this is why crucifixes and holy water works on them because they are demonically possessed. A lot of people don't know why crucifixes and holy water work. It's like because you're dealing with demons, you're doing exorcisms, basically. That's why you have to do these weird, you know, uh, religious ceremonies when getting rid of a vampire, and why it's so hard to do so because you are exorcising a demon. And because people don't know where it comes from, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
They may say, "Oh, well, these are the rules," but it's like, "Well, why are they the rules?" So, yes, I do think that scientific vampires are becoming more prevalent because it's easier to understand. It's, oh, well, because of science, this is why. Um, Also, because I think creators kept finding it harder to be able to engage their readers or viewers. You have to have, that connection of some sort so that your audience understands what's going on. Back in the what was it? It was 1980, not 19, I'm sorry, 1897, I think is when Dracula was written. I very much so could be
Uh,
wrong.
Somewhere in
Um,
the 1890s. Yeah.
exactly. Everybody was Christian, so you didn't
Yep.
have to spell things out. You're dealing with a demon. Okay, I get it. Done. Don't, say no more. How do we get this particular demon out? That's the question. Nowadays, we're dealing with a demon. Well, explain to me what you mean by demon. Well, I mean, it's this type of creature and stuff like that. It's like, well, which type of hells are we talking? Are we talking like
Hmm.
fire and brimstone hell? Are we talking, Dante's Inferno hell? Are we talking, the more existential, a hell born out of your mind? I mean, what type of hell are we? There's too much out there. So it's just
Hmm.
easier to go, it's science. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I also blame Jim Carrey. There's a movie called Once Bitten.
Oh, yeah.
I think it came out in 1985, and I believe that is the first time that we see the ultraviolet is what harms them in sunlight. So therefore, we'll
Mm,
get some ultraviolet light bulbs, and that's just de facto now in Hollywood movies.
mm-hmm.
Like they don't even bother to explain it. Like, yep, they hate ultraviolet lights. Why? Um, but do you see this as or I guess, well, as an author yourself and
Mm-hmm.
as an editor, um, does this lack of religious edu I guess you say religious education or familiarity, does it make your job a lot harder? Because one thing I've noticed is, I teach some classes in for people in a few different countries, and I'm trying to explain like old Chinese concepts that are thousands of years old. So I usually compare and contrast with things from the Bible because they're roughly the same age. When I do that for Brazilians, they can still understand because they still know the Bible stories. I cannot do that in the US because people just stare at me like I'm speaking a foreign language or something. Do you find that in your work when you're editing or writing as well?
I find that it's hard to explain stories to people who have mostly been exposed to moral relativism. you
Ah,
know and that's the biggest problem. You can't have monsters when you live in a world with no monsters. You can't have bad guys. You can't have Cruella de Vil when there's an entire movie telling you that she's the hero even though everybody knows she's a puppy killer.
yeah, yeah.
you know I will always use her as my example of, no, sometimes there are monsters and sometimes there are bad guys. And so for a lot of these stories, people, they're like, well, why is it this or why is it that? And they get kind of mealy, then it's like, well, that's just wrong that you're going after this person. It's like, no, they're evil. Like, but they may have had a good reason. It's like, yeah, and that reason is they're demon possessed. I bring up Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Um, if you've ever seen the film, if you're familiar with Vampire Hunter D, you've read the book even, you know that in that world, by the way, his name is, he hunts vampires. Why? Because they're all assholes and they're
Hmm.
all elitist, demonic creatures that enjoy seeing humans um, filled with pain and suffering. And the whole point of that specific story is that Meyer Link doesn't. In fact,
Hmm.
it's because of the purity of a young girl that he has decided that he's going to try to fight his vampiric nature. And going back to what you were saying, that's another thing that people don't understand when they have moral relativism. And that is, if you have somebody who is, evil by at least the way Christians think, anybody and everybody can be saved.
Hmm.
Anybody and everybody can realize, you know what? I need to change my ways and be a better person. And I am going to make the effort to change who I am. Moral relativism does not allow for that. So, stories like Bloodlust, where Meyer is actively changing who he is, and Dee nearly kills him because he thinks that he's a monster, and then it's shown at the last moment, no, he's not a monster. He's changed his ways, and Dee accepts that. That has weight. That is meaningful. A lot of people don't get that meaning. They don't get that anymore. And so it makes it hard to try to tell people about great stories, or when we do open calls for anthologies, it's hard to slush through the stories when you have all these people where their main characters don't know that they're the villains. Like, well, I'm saving the innocent. I'm doing this. I'm like, you're slaughtering thousands. It's like, it's like, yes, but I'm a vampire who's doing it for good. It's like, no, you're still killing
Mm,
people. Or I'm like Dexter and I'm just killing people. I'm killing
only the bad ones.
murderers. Yeah, only the bad ones. It's like, you're still killing people.
Um, what would you recommend to people to sort of get around that? Do they have to spend more time like building up the lore of their stories before they sort of get into it and like really detail out how the rules of whatever supernatural phenomenon works, or or I don't know, just skip it all together? And what's your advice to people who are trying to make horror with traditional themes work in a modern world?
That's a good question. I suppose I would first say, like if you're brand new to creation, you're just getting started. Um, I would first say, what is your end goal? And expose yourself to tons of stories in the same vein that you are trying to tell so you can learn how other people have done it, what techniques they have done, what tropes they have done, to be able to bring that into your own story to get your point across the best. um, yeah, I'd say start with that. I know a lot of people say, if you're going to be a writer, you have to read a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that is 110% true, but you also have to watch a lot because even though you may be writing a novel, um, a movie may have a lot of the themes that you're looking for, may have a lot of storytelling elements that you can use as well in your story. Or do something and you go, God, that was awful. Okay, I'm not doing that. So,
Yeah, I've always said you can learn a lot from what not to do. Probably as much as you can learn by watching like the high tier exemplars in whatever genre you're looking for.
oh yeah, we have shorthand based on years of watching Mystery Science Theater for different tropes or things like uh, 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 one we will often get is um, like Ishi will be slush reading, and I'll ask him, so how was the story? And he'll just say, it's who's the ball. And what he means by that is you have no idea who is doing anything at any given time. There's either too many characters, or there's too much going on, or the writer themselves gets their and I don't mean this in the SJW way, I mean this in the real way. They get their pronouns confused. And what I mean by that is if you have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
five women and everything is she said, you don't know who's doing what.
That's very true. So as and I don't think we mentioned it before, but you also do visual arts. So
Mhm.
as a visual artist, as a writer, as an editor, is there some kind of horror genre or some type of story that you'd like to do but you haven't had a chance?
Well, I'd like to write a vampire story. I haven't done that yet.
Hmm.
Although I really want to do the one that is the closest to a burning desire for me is I want to do a ghost ship story. I
Oh,
love maritime horror, and I have an idea of a ghost ship story set in space, because you know nobody's afraid of the oceans anymore. We've got GPS, so
that's true.
but space is still scary as hell. So, and a lot of things transfer over to space very well. So, I have an idea. I have the plot from beginning to end. I just got to put it down.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. So when you write,
Mhm.
how is it something like you plot it out and it takes a few years, or are you someone who can sit down and like bang it out in a weekend?
Me personally, I like to do an outline, here's where it starts, here's the climax point, here's the end point. And then I'll fill in the middle, do an outline, basically pull in the big bullet points on how we get from point A to C, D, whatever, and then I'll fill it in. And I found I have to do that because if I don't, I will get wrapped up in the little teeny tiny details and I won't get anywhere. I have a story that I have rewritten nearly from beginning to end 5 times. It's also another horror story. And it's because since I never did an outline, I never gave myself a roadmap on where I wanted to go. When I'd go back to read over what I had, I'd get stuck and I'd wind up editing. And then I'd edit and I'd edit and I edit until I rage quit and I leave. And then I come back a year later and decide, what I had before was crap. I'm going to start all over again. And, and the cycle continues.
So it's basically the anti George R. R. Martin method.
Pretty
Speaking of
much.
horrors,
Oh,
um,
God.
uh, that's interesting. So in terms of 01 publishing and whatnot,
Hmm.
do you see you guys, you have the anthologies mostly. Do
Hmm.
you see your guys getting more into straight novels, um, or more into the graphic novel side, or especially with, let's say, outside authors who you're publishing? Do you see that increasing in the future, or do you think it's a better strategy to keep things like smaller, like more laser focused, let's say?
Um, I can definitely say that we have plans to open our doors within the next year to 2 years,
Oh, wow.
definitely, to start receiving uh, uh, pitches again for novels, and graphic novels both. For the moment, we are focusing on anthologies because um, we love them. B, especially when we do our open calls and we get a bunch of new authors. It's a way for new people who otherwise may not have get their stories out there to get published, get that notch on their belt. And we do pay for our anthologies. We don't say, oh well, you get the privilege of having your name on it. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
we founded our company on show me the money, and that is what we stand for. um it's simply a case of our timetable did get thrown back a little bit due to personal things that came up, and just life happens. So, but we definitely have plans to start everything up. We've already revved our company back up. We've put out 3 books so far this year, so which is wonderful. And yes, there's definitely more on the horizon.
So one thing I found very interesting about Zero One, most of the people I talk to are very into the crowdfunding space,
Hmm.
and that seems to, even larger companies these days are trying to crowdfund books. Whereas, not that it seems that you guys are necessarily against it, but you have everything on Amazon. Um, Frankly, Zero One does a lot more than I would expect for a company of its size. Especially considering a lot of your books also have audiobooks.
Hmm.
Kindle, a lot of them are print and audiobooks where appropriate. Um, do you see that as like I guess I say, a better business model as opposed to like the crowdfunding model, or where do you guys see that?
Well, actually, that makes me feel like I've kind of maybe done my job. We actually did 7 successful crowdfunding campaigns. Pretty much every book that you see on Amazon started life as either a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign. Um, for instance, volumes 1 and volume 2
Hmm.
of Whispers from the Abyss were both Kickstarter campaigns. Case File Arkham 1 and 2, each one of these had their own Indiegogo campaign. So crowdfunding is absolutely wonderful. I do highly recommend it, if for no other reason than the fact that it is um, great promotional
Hmm.
avenue. It's a great way to get the word out. In today's day and age where everything is available on Amazon, and that's nothing against that. It's just uh, even in the past 10 years, um, things have shifted to where you can get anything that you want almost instantly online.
Yeah.
So crowdfunding is a great way for you, the writer, you, the creator, to be able to grow an audience and offer something to that audience who's going to be there with you on the ground floor at the very beginning, something special. You give them something that they're not going to be able to, get on Prime. They're not going to be able to get anywhere else. It is something unique to them, being that person at that moment believing in your product and believing in you as a creator. And it has been wonderful to have readers that have come back time and time again, who have basically have loyalty to our works, or email me and harass me. It's like, hey, when's the next book coming out? It's like, you know what, the fact that they do that, I love that, because it means that I have been able to engage with them and touch them somehow with my works. And that's what crowdfunding gives you. Crowdfunding
Hmm.
gives a connection between the reader and creator that other online avenues do not.
That's a really interesting point of view because most people I talk to, um, I definitely see that, but for me, there's always the dichotomy between um, a lot of people don't understand when you put your project on a crowdfunding site, you're giving them a percentage of whatever you bring in on that.
Mhm.
So to me, when I see sites like Indiegogo, um, or I like Luke Stone, but he's got his new Fund My Comics site.
Mhm.
For me, it doesn't make sense because I have to bring all of those people to those sites. So now with Kickstarter, they have their own community, and like if you're doing role playing games, there are people who will just back whatever. You know, there are people who go and search for comics and will just back whatever comic. So it might be worth the money I have to give to them in terms of improved sales, but at least with Indiegogo, I just don't see that. And you know, with books getting more expensive, if you're not doing the whole thing yourself, labor is getting more expensive. So that's an interesting point of view, because I also do see a lot of people having their own sites now and just selling directly on that.
Mhm.
Personally, that's where I try to buy because I know, Indiegogo or Kickstarter, they're not going to take 10%. I would rather give the money to whoever's actually making the product. But I guess I hadn't really thought about um, the community aspect like that. That's a really interesting point.
No, it's one way of ensuring that you're going to have a certain percentage coming back for more later. And yes, it's true. Websites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, they are going to take their cut, but they also are offering the platform that
Hmm.
so that you don't have to build it from the ground up. Same with like Amazon. Yes, Amazon does take a cut from either the Kindle sales or even the physical sales, but I see it worth it because they offer accessibility.
Yeah.
Nobody knows, yep, not nobody, I apologize. Other than those who have been our readers, most people are not going to know to go to 01publishing.com
Right.
unless they see this show. But everybody's heard of Amazon. So when you say, "Oh, you can just go to Amazon and get my stuff," it's accessibility. It's something instant that people can go, "Oh, I know that. I can just go there." Or, "Hey, I have that app. I'll just look it up right now." Um, you know, things like that.
Hmm.
Also, if you say, "Oh, I'm on Amazon," or "I'm on Kickstarter. I'm on a known website that everybody has access to. Um, that on some level is going to tell people, oh, this person's legit. They're not fly by night. Definitely sell your stuff on your own website, 01publishing.com. You can get all of our books, both digitally and physically. But and yes, 100% goes to the creators. But when you're trying to get grow your audience or get that accessibility to new people, it's good to have those other avenues that are more mainstream because then the casual reader is more likely to check it out.
Hmm. That's true. So switching gears a little bit, what are you going to be for Halloween?
I'm terrible. Every year I put so much effort into decorating. By the way, this is not Halloween decorations. This is how my living room looks, all year round. But yeah, except for the Halloween lights, which I don't think you can see. But I've been spending so much time building my haunt on the front lawn. Um, I never remember that, oh yeah, I need a costume. So I'm still figuring it out. I'll probably do what I always do, which is well, be a vampire. I've got a sexy black dress and I'll go with that.
All right, that's a good go-to. And I guess the other question is, what kind of candy do you give out?
Candy I won't eat like Tootsie Pops, Tootsie Rolls.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
Like, no, anything that I will actually eat does not enter into this house.
Uh, yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. So what sort of advice would you give to people who want to get into the horror business, whether it's visually or as an author?
Oh, that's kind of broad strokes.
Maybe for
Look,
someone they're like, I think I could do this, but they just don't know where to begin.
well, with anything, I mean, it's going to, you're going to roll your eyes and go, oh, okay, that answer. With anything, it's just, just dive in and do it. And what I mean by that is definitely, like I said before, research the types of stories you want to tell, especially in the medium that you want to tell. Um, Ishii, when he was writing Case File Arkham, we would watch, even though it's a graphic novel, we watched like 30 noir films, not PI noir, although some are in there, but just noir films of the era. And he had a notebook and he would write down phrases and sentences and key things that would be good to put into beef up the story. He would read Marlowe. He would read not Doc Hammer, sorry, Mike Hammer.
Yeah.
He go and take notes on how sentence structure was. Again, phrases. Were people doing long monologues or was it staccato short sentences? Um, Things like that. So lots and lots and lots of research of the type of story you're wanting to tell to put into your story. Your first, and here's another thing. Your first story, it's not going to be perfect. In fact, it might even suck. But you know what? That's okay because then the next one is going to be better and the next one is going to be better. And find yourself people who will give you good critiques. You
Hmm.
may have a good best friend or a parent who will actually give you a good critique, but you are the rare person because 9 times out of 10, your friends and family are going to go, "Oh, this is so great! You should publish it just as it is," and really, it sucks. So find yourself people who don't have a stake in hurting your feelings to tell you exactly what's wrong with your story so that you can, I don't want to say fix it, I'm going to say improve on it. You don't have to pay an editor. In fact, when you're first starting out, I'm going to say you probably don't want to because editors are expensive. But the court of public opinion is there and it's free. Reddit has entire threads of people who are more than happy to give you their opinion. And
It's
you
got
know
to be the
what?
most brutal reviews ever.
It is, but you know what? Sometimes they have good things to say. And the other great thing about that is you can read these reviews and go, "Oh, that person's full of it. That person's full of it. This person's just being mean to be mean. Hey, wait a minute. This thing might be good." And just I guess that's the other thing is artists in general are very delicate. It doesn't matter what genre, and you got to
Yeah,
toughen up. You got to toughen up if you're gonna make it.
that's true. And so let's say people are ready to make that leap, and like, hey, I think this is really something. I need to find a professional editor. How do you go about finding an editor?
Um, Again, go online, go on the internet. I
Like, is
do.
is is there any site they hang out at, like at editors.com, and you got like a listing or?
Sadly, no. You'd think there would be, but no. I've found editors tend to run with the writers' crowds. So strangely enough, the most editors I've ever found is by going on to Twitter, going to all the writer life
Mhm.
tags, see who posts there, and then in their bios they'll say that they're a writer, but they'll also say that they're an editor, and that's the most editors I have ever found.
Hmm.
Before that, I would go to conventions like Horror Writers Association, industry cons, and there was usually, and then go to the panels for editing and see who sits down. And then see how many of those people are actually there because they're editors or because they're writers wanting to know how to better please their editors.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Well, I know it's getting late for you out there,
Hmm.
and you just got off work. So I'd like to thank you for coming on. And I don't know why I never had you on before. Um,
Uh,
was
I think it was because the schedule.
Oh yeah, well that's true. Um, but yeah. So any last word of advice or any thoughts?
Um, Actually, for all you creators out there, you don't need a publisher. The world that we're in, anybody can put out their movie, put out their book. You don't need a publisher. Publishers exist only to do the jobs that you either don't want to do or don't have the skills to do. And that's why you pay them. Anybody who tells you you need a publisher is full of it.
Sage advice. So thank you very much for coming, and definitely love to have you back again.
Definitely. I'd love to.
So for everyone who's left, Monday night I have Von Klaus coming. He's gonna author of Monster MD and Terror in the Trenches. He's got a new book, Kitaru, uh, about witch hunting. And then the next Monday, I have Steve Hervey, and he'll be talking about a new graphic novel for Black Tiger, which is sort of a kung fu horror series. And there will probably be more guests in between, so stay tuned. So, everyone, good night, and see you soon.
Good night, everyone.